They called her the executioner behind her back, and Dr. Victoria Ashford wore that title like armor. 20 students expelled in 3 years. Not suspended, not warned, expelled. Victoria had built her reputation at Georgetown University Law School on one principle: excellence without exception. Her constitutional law classroom was a battlefield where only the strongest survived, and she had never once questioned whether that made her effective or simply cruel. The September morning light poured through her office windows as she reviewed the new semester roster. Her corner office in the McDonough Hall overlooked the Potomac, a view most professors would kill for. Victoria barely noticed it anymore. The mahogany desk, the leather chair, the framed degrees from Yale and Harvard, these were props in a performance she had perfected since childhood. "You've got 28 new first years," Dean Richard Holloway said, settling into the chair across from her. His silver cufflinks caught the light as he crossed his legs. "Try to leave us with at least 20 by December." Victoria didn't smile. "I don't control who fails to meet standards, Richard." "Of course not," he chuckled, the sound of old money finding itself amusing. "That's why the board loves you. No coddling, no excuses." She turned a page in the roster. Names blurred together. Privileged children of senators, legacy admissions, a few diversity candidates the administration paraded for brochures. None of them understood what law truly demanded. None of them had earned their place through anything but birth or quota. "There's one interesting addition," Richard continued. "Transfer student, Marcus Thompson. Army veteran, single father. Quite the compelling application essay about sacrifice and determination." Victoria's pen paused. "Single father in law school? How does he expect to manage coursework? That's his problem, isn't it?" Richard stood, smoothing his tie. "I'm sure you'll treat him exactly as you treat everyone else." After he left, Victoria stared at Marcus Thompson's name. 28 students. By her calculation, at least 8 wouldn't survive her first exam. She had no way of knowing that number 29 on her mental list, this single father with his stories of sacrifice, would be the one to finally crack the ice she had mistaken for strength. Hello, the Shade of Love family. So happy you're here. Before we jump into the next part of the story, tell us, where are you watching from? Drop your country and state in the comments. Also, how's the story been so far? We love reading your thoughts. Yes, every single comment, and it really keeps us motivated. Let's aim for 50 comments on this video. Think we can hit it? Your support means the world, so don't forget to comment, share, and keep the energy flowing. Victoria's childhood home in Alexandria still smelled of furniture polish and disapproval. She sat across from her mother in the sunroom, porcelain teacups between them like weapons neither would acknowledge. Helen Ashford at 58 remained exactly what she had always been: immaculate, imposing, impossible to please. 20 expulsions, Helen said, stirring her tea with precise movements. Your father would have been proud. He never tolerated mediocrity either. Victoria watched the afternoon light catch the crystal chandelier. Her father had been a federal judge, a man who believed weakness was contagious. He had died when she was 19, leaving behind a legacy of excellence she had spent every day since trying to honor. The university values consistency, Victoria replied. Standards mean nothing if they bend. Exactly. Helen set down her spoon. Though I hear they've admitted another affirmative action case, a single father no less, as if law school is a daycare. The words settled into Victoria's chest like familiar stones. She had grown up hearing her father discuss those people at dinner parties, always with the veneer of intellectualism that made prejudice sound like policy analysis. Merit, he would say. It's about merit. But Victoria had learned young that merit, in her family's vocabulary, had a color. He's a veteran, Victoria said, surprising herself. So? Veterans aren't automatically intelligent. And a single father? Helen's laugh was delicate and devastating. What happened to the mother, one wonders. These situations always have a story, and it's rarely flattering. Victoria thought of her own father, present but perpetually distant, measuring her worth in grades and achievements. She had never questioned his standards because questioning meant weakness. Now, at 28, those standards had become her skeleton, holding her upright even as they kept her rigid. I'll treat him like any other student, she said finally. Of course you will, darling. Helen smiled. You'll treat him fairly, and fairness will handle the rest. It always does. Driving back to Georgetown that evening, Victoria passed through neighborhoods that shifted from manicured lawns to cracked sidewalks. She kept her eyes forward, her mind already organizing tomorrow's lesson plan. Marcus Thompson would receive no special treatment, not kindness, not cruelty, just the same impossible standards she applied to everyone. She told herself this was justice. She had no idea it was simply prejudice dressed in professional clothing. The first day of constitutional law operated like natural selection. Victoria stood at the front of the lecture hall, watching 63 students arrange themselves into the stadium seating. She could already identify the survivors and the casualties, the confident ones who would crumble under pressure, the quiet ones who might surprise her, the entitled ones who assumed their family names guaranteed passage. Constitutional interpretation is not about opinion, she began, her voice cutting through whispered conversations. It is about precision. If you cannot be precise, you cannot be lawyers. And if you cannot be lawyers, you are wasting Georgetown's resources and my time. The room fell silent. Good. Mr. Keller. She fixed her gaze on a blonde student in the third row. Brandon Keller, legacy admission, father on the university board. Explain the concept of originalism in 30 seconds. Brandon's confidence flickered. It's when you interpret the Constitution based on what the founders originally meant. 15 seconds wasted on and imprecision. Sit down. She moved through the room like a surgeon identifying tumors. Question after question, student after student, each answer dissected and found wanting. This was her method. Establish dominance early, let fear sharpen their focus. Then she reached the back row. Marcus Thompson sat with perfect posture, a worn notebook open before him. His clothes were clean but clearly not new, a stark contrast to the designer labels surrounding him. He met her gaze without flinching. Mr. Thompson. Victoria let his name hang in the air. Since you've joined us from less traditional circumstances, perhaps you can explain substantive due process. She watched for the stumble, the nervous swallow. Instead, Marcus spoke with measured calm. Substantive due process protects fundamental rights from government interference, even if procedural requirements are met. It's rooted in the 5th and 14th Amendments and has evolved through cases like Griswold and Obergefell. Accurate, concise, irritatingly unshakable. Adequate, Victoria said, the word costing her more than she would admit. She moved on quickly, but something uncomfortable lodged beneath her ribs. After class, she overheard Brandon Keller muttering to his friends. Bet she goes easy on him. Diversity points, you know? Victoria should have corrected him. Instead, she walked past, letting the assumption breathe. It was easier than examining why Marcus Thompson's composure had unsettled her so deeply. The university library at 9 p.m. held a particular silence, the desperate quiet of students clinging to ambition. Victoria had come to retrieve a research text from the reserve section. She preferred the library empty, its marble floors echoing only her footsteps. But tonight, a small voice disrupted the stillness. Daddy, what's Constitution mean? Victoria rounded a bookshelf and stopped. Marcus Thompson sat at a corner table, textbooks spread before him, while a little girl in a pink jacket traced words in his notebook. Constitution is the rules for our whole country, Lilybug, Marcus explained softly. Like how our house has rules, but bigger. That's a lot of rules, Lily said seriously. It sure is. Victoria knew she should leave. This wasn't her concern, but her feet remained planted as she watched Marcus balance a highlighter in one hand and his daughter's small fingers in the other. Mr. Thompson. Marcus looked up, and for a moment, something flickered across his face. Not fear, but weariness. The exhaustion of a man constantly being evaluated. Dr. Ashford, I apologize if we're disturbing. Children aren't permitted in the library after 7. I know. He didn't make excuses. My childcare fell through. It won't happen again. Lily peered up at Victoria with enormous brown eyes. Are you my daddy's teacher? Victoria felt suddenly exposed, as if this child could see through her professional armor. I am. Daddy says you're really smart. He studies your class the most. Marcus closed his eyes briefly. Lily. What? You said... It's fine, Victoria interrupted, her voice sharper than intended. Just keep her quiet. She walked away before either could respond, her chest tight with something she refused to name. At the reserve desk, she requested her book with clipped efficiency, but her mind kept returning to that corner table. A man raising a child alone, studying law, making no excuses. Her father's voice echoed. Circumstances don't excuse failure. But another thought surfaced, unbidden. What circumstances had she ever had to overcome? Victoria left the library without looking back. Tomorrow, Marcus Thompson would be just another student. Tomorrow, she would remember that sympathy was a luxury lawyers couldn't afford. She told herself this firmly. She almost believed it. The memory of Lily's eyes followed Victoria into the weekend. She tried to work, grading papers, preparing lectures, but concentration fragmented like light through a prism. Each time she read Marcus Thompson's assignments, she found herself searching for flaws that weren't there. His analysis was sharp, his arguments structured, his conclusions sound. This irritated her more than inadequacy would have. Saturday brunch with Helen became an interrogation. You seem distracted, darling. Her mother's observation cut through the restaurant noise. Is work troubling you? One student, Victoria admitted, immediately regretting it. The single father? Helen's eyebrow arched. I thought you said you'd handle him normally. I am. He's competent. Competent? Helen tasted the word like inferior wine. Coming from you, that's practically a love letter. Don't tell me you're going soft, Victoria. Your father's legacy. I know what his legacy demands. But did she? Sitting in this overpriced Georgetown restaurant, surrounded by people who had never wondered where their next meal would come from, Victoria felt the familiar architecture of her beliefs shifting. Her father had taught her that success was earned, that poverty was a choice, that some people simply lacked the discipline for excellence. Marcus Thompson had discipline. He had a child depending on him. He had every reason to fail, and was refusing to. Perhaps he's an exception, Victoria said quietly. There are no exceptions, darling. There are standards, and there are excuses. You taught me that. No, her father had taught them both. But for the first time, Victoria wondered if her father's lessons had been wisdom, or simply well-dressed cruelty. That night, she found herself driving past Marcus's neighborhood. Not intentionally, she told herself, just a different route home. The apartment complexes here showed age and wear. Children played on cracked sidewalks. A man walked 2 jobs worth of exhaustion toward a bus stop. She thought of Lily doing homework in a library because childcare fell through. She thought of her own childhood. Private tutors, summer homes, every advantage money could engineer. For 28 years, Victoria had believed she earned her success. Now, watching this neighborhood struggle toward another day, she wondered how much of her merit was simply luck wearing achievement's mask. The doubt terrified her. It also refused to leave. Hello, the Shade of Love family. So happy you're here. Before we jump into the next part of the story, tell us, where are you watching from? Drop your country and state in the comments. Also, how's the story been so far? We love reading your thoughts. Yes, every single comment. And it really keeps us motivated. Let's aim for 50 comments on this video. Think we can hit it? Your support means the world, so don't forget to comment, share, and keep the energy flowing. Victoria witnessed it by accident. She had stayed late grading midterms when shouting erupted in the hallway outside her office. Through her window, she saw Brandon Keller cornering a younger student, Jasmine Rivera, she recognized, the working-class transfer from New Mexico. You think you belong here? Brandon's voice dripped contempt. Some scholarship charity case competing with people who actually earned their spots? I earned my spot, Jasmine said, but her voice trembled. Please, you're a checkbox, just like your friend Marcus. Georgetown's little diversity project, that's enough. Marcus appeared from the stairwell, his voice quiet, but carrying the weight of someone who had faced worse than entitled boys. Brandon laughed. Look who's here, the single dad playing lawyer. How's the kid? Still dragging her to libraries because you can't afford a babysitter? Victoria watched Marcus's jaw tighten, but his response remained controlled. "Jasmine? You good?" "I'm fine," she whispered. "Great. Let's go study." Marcus turned, placing himself between Jasmine and Brandon. "Walking away?" Brandon called. "Guess that's what you people do best. I'm walking away because you're not worth losing my future over." Marcus looked back, his eyes steady. "But if you ever talk to her like that again, I'll report it. Not fight it. Report it. Because unlike you, I actually understand how the law works." Victoria should have intervened. Instead, she stood frozen, watching Marcus guide Jasmine toward the library, his hand steady on her shoulder. Later, she found herself in the cafeteria, overhearing Carmen Lopez talking to another worker. "That Marcus, he's something else," Carmen said, wiping down the counter. "His little girl was here yesterday while he took an exam. I watched her for an hour. He came back with flowers he'd picked from the courtyard. For me. Said he'd never forget kindness. Most students don't even look at us," the other worker replied. "Most students aren't him." Victoria returned to her office with her coffee growing cold in her hands. 20 students expelled. She had prided herself on recognizing weakness, identifying those who didn't belong. But watching Marcus defend Jasmine without raising his voice, hearing Carmen describe his gratitude, Victoria realized she had been measuring the wrong things entirely. Strength wasn't cruelty dressed in standards. Marcus Thompson was showing her what it actually looked like. The faculty meeting became a referendum on Victoria's doubt. "We need to discuss Brandon Keller's academic standing," Dean Holloway began, his tone careful. "He's failed his midterms, but his father has concerns about instructional fairness." Victoria stiffened. "Brandon Keller doesn't study. That's not an instructional issue. His father is on the board, Victoria." Richard's smile never reached his eyes. "Perhaps some additional tutoring could be arranged. I don't arrange exceptions for incompetence. But you'd arrange them for others?" The question came from Dr. William Foster, a property law professor known for his traditionalist views. "I've noticed Marcus Thompson's daughter in the library multiple times. Technically a violation, yet no consequences." The room's attention swiveled toward Victoria. "I addressed it with him directly," she said. "Addressed, not enforced." Foster leaned back. "Interesting. The executioner shows mercy to an affirmative action admission, but holds legacy students to impossible standards. One might see a pattern. The pattern is competence versus incompetence." "Is it?" Foster's voice carried generations of assumption. "Or has the Academy's obsession with diversity finally compromised even you?" Victoria felt heat climbing her neck. 3 months ago, she would have agreed with Foster. 3 months ago, Marcus Thompson was just a name on a roster, a checkbox she could dismiss without thought. Now, defending him felt like defending something larger, something she hadn't realized needed protection. Marcus Thompson earned his place through examination scores, not accommodation, she said carefully. Brandon Keller inherited his seat. If merit matters, the results speak clearly. The silence stretched. Dean Holloway finally cleared his throat. "Perhaps we table this discussion. Victoria, a word in my office after?" In his office, Richard dropped the diplomatic pretense. "The Keller family donates $2 million annually. Marcus Thompson contributes nothing but a compelling personal statement. I need you to understand the mathematics. Here, I understand that mathematics shouldn't determine academic integrity. Then you understand nothing about how institutions survive." Victoria left his office feeling like she'd swallowed glass. Her entire career had been built on this institution's approval. Now, maintaining that approval meant betraying something that had just begun to feel like principle. She wasn't sure when Marcus Thompson had become a line she wouldn't cross. She only knew that crossing it was no longer possible. Victoria found Marcus in the courtyard after his evening class, Lily asleep on the bench beside him. "Mr. Thompson, may I sit?" Surprise flickered across his features, but he nodded. Victoria lowered herself onto the bench, acutely aware of how strange this was, how far outside her practiced boundaries. "I owe you an apology," she began. "For what, specifically?" The question wasn't aggressive, just honest. Victoria appreciated that he didn't make this easy. "For assuming things about you before I knew anything. For treating your presence here as something to be tested rather than earned." Marcus studied her face in the lamplight. "What changed?" "I watched you. With Jasmine. With the cafeteria staff. With your daughter. She paused. I was raised to believe certain things about certain people. I'm realizing those beliefs were comfortable lies. Lily stirred beside them, and Marcus adjusted her jacket gently before responding. My mother died when Lily was 2. Cancer. No insurance, late diagnosis. I was deployed when it started. Couldn't get home fast enough. His voice remained steady, but Victoria heard the weight beneath it. People looked at me after. Young black man, single father, veteran with no degree, and they saw a story they'd already written. Irresponsible, broken, predictable. I wrote that story, Victoria admitted. You did, Marcus met her eyes. But you're sitting here now. That's not nothing. I expelled 20 students who probably deserved second chances. I called it standards. It was just control. Why? The question cracked something open. Victoria thought of her father's voice, her mother's expectations, the way she had built walls from other people's blueprints. Because I was afraid that without being hard, I'd be nothing. My father was a judge. He taught me that softness was weakness. She looked at Lily's sleeping face. He never once told me he loved me. He only told me I met his standards. Or didn't. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. That sounds lonely. 2 words. They shouldn't have mattered. But Victoria felt tears press against her eyes for the first time in years. It was, she whispered. It is. Marcus didn't offer solutions or comfort. He simply sat with her in the courtyard while his daughter slept, and the night deepened around them. It was the kindest thing anyone had done for her in longer than she could remember. The letter arrived on a Thursday. Victoria read it 3 times, her hands trembling with each pass. Dean Holloway's signature at the bottom felt like a betrayal carved in ink. Marcus Thompson was being placed on academic probation. The official reason, unauthorized presence of a minor in university facilities. The real reason sat in the subtext. Board member Keller's influence, purchasing consequences for the student who had embarrassed his son. Victoria stood outside the dean's office for 10 minutes before entering without knocking. This is retaliation, she said, throwing the letter on his desk. Richard barely looked up. It's policy enforcement. You yourself noted the library violation. I noted it and moved on because it was meaningless. He's a single father doing everything right. He's a liability. And frankly, Victoria, so are you becoming. Richard finally met her gaze. I've had 3 board members ask why our most demanding professor suddenly defends a student she should have failed by now. Should have failed? His work is exemplary. His circumstances are incompatible with this institution's standards. We both know that. Victoria felt the floor shift beneath her. You want me to fail him. I want you to apply your famous standards objectively. If he can't manage childcare, if he can't meet every requirement, if he stumbles even once, document it. Richard smiled coldly. You've ended 20 careers on less. She walked out without responding. That evening, she found Marcus in the library. Alone this time, Lily presumably with a neighbor. His face showed the strain of someone who had just received devastating news. I heard about the probation, Victoria said quietly. Word travels fast. He didn't look up from his textbook. I've got 3 weeks to find permanent childcare I can't afford, or I'm out. This isn't about childcare. It's about power. I know what it's about, Dr. Ashford. Now he looked at her, exhaustion and dignity warring in his expression. I've known what it's about my whole life. The question is what you're going to do about it. Victoria thought of her father's portrait hanging in her mother's hallway. She thought of 20 students whose careers she had ended to prove her own strength. She thought of Lily asking what Constitution meant. I'm going to fight, she said. Marcus's expression shifted. Not quite trust, but something close to hope. Then I guess we're in this together. Victoria called Professor Grace Mitchell that night. I need your help, she said without preamble. I need to understand how to fight the board without destroying myself. Grace's pause carried years of watching Victoria from a cautious distance. The executioner is asking for help. This must be serious. A student is being railroaded because a donor's son couldn't handle being called out. I won't participate. Marcus Thompson. Grace's voice warmed slightly. I've watched him in my sociology seminar. Good man. Better father. He's both. And I've been neither good nor particularly human for most of my career. I'm trying to change that. They met at Grace's home, where Victoria outlined everything. The Keller influence, the probation pretext, the dean's implicit instructions to manufacture failure. "You'll need documentation," Grace said. "Other faculty who've witnessed Thompson's competence. Students willing to speak about Keller's harassment. Jasmine Rivera, Tyler Brennan, they saw what happened. And you'll need to be prepared to lose everything." Grace met her eyes. "The board doesn't forgive disloyalty. Your tenure, your reputation. My reputation is built on cruelty I called excellence. Maybe losing it isn't the worst thing." Victoria spent the next week building a case. She gathered exam scores, peer evaluations, testimony from Carmen Lopez about Marcus's character. She compiled Brandon Keller's history of complaints, harassment incidents the university had buried, cheating allegations his father's money had dissolved. On Friday, she met Marcus in her office. "I'm presenting this to the Academic Integrity Committee Monday," she said, sliding the folder toward him. "It documents everything. Keller's misconduct, the board's interference, your exemplary record." Marcus opened the folder slowly. "This could end your career." "My career was ending anyway. I just didn't realize it was already dead. I'd just been performing its corpse." Victoria allowed herself a small smile. "You showed me what actually living in this profession could look like, using law to protect people, not just to exercise power. Dr. Ashford." "Victoria, please." He nodded slowly. "Victoria, why are you really doing this?" She considered the question seriously. "Because my father taught me that strength meant being feared. You've taught me it means being willing to sacrifice. I'm finally ready to learn from the right teacher." Marcus extended his hand. Victoria took it. "Thank you," he said simply. "Don't thank me yet. We still have to win." "Hello, the Shade of Love family. So happy you're here. Before we jump into the next part of the story, tell us, where are you watching from? Drop your country and state in the comments. Also, how's the story been so far? We love reading your thoughts. Yes, every single comment. And it really keeps us motivated. Let's aim for 50 comments on this video. Think we can hit it? Your support means the world. So don't forget to comment, share, and keep the energy flowing. The academic integrity hearing drew an audience. Victoria hadn't expected the room to be full. Faculty, students, even local press someone had tipped off. Dean Holloway sat at the head table, his face carefully neutral, while board member Keller glowered from the gallery. "Dr. Ashford," the committee chair began, "you've requested this hearing to address concerns about a student's probationary status. Please proceed." Victoria stood, feeling the weight of every eye in the room. 3 weeks ago, Marcus Thompson was placed on academic probation for having his 6-year-old daughter present in the university library after hours. Today, I'm here to demonstrate that this action was retaliatory, discriminatory, and institutionally corrupt. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Keller Sr. leaned forward, his jaw tight. Victoria presented everything: documents, testimonies, the paper trail of buried complaints against Brandon Keller. She called Jasmine Rivera, who described Brandon's harassment with quiet courage. She called Tyler Brennan, who testified to witnessing the confrontation. Then she called herself. "I have spent my career believing that harshness was excellence. I expelled 20 students, telling myself I was maintaining standards when I was often simply exercising power." Her voice didn't waver. "Marcus Thompson met every standard I set. His only crime was being a single father without the wealth to make his circumstances invisible. I enforced a violation against him that I would have overlooked for any student whose family could donate a building." "Dr. Ashford," Dean Holloway's voice carried warning. "Consider carefully. I've considered for 28 years, Dean Holloway. I considered my way into becoming someone my students fear rather than respect. I considered my way into protecting privilege while punishing struggle." Victoria turned to face the room fully. "Marcus Thompson belongs at this institution more than I do. He earned his place. I inherited mine and called it merit." The silence stretched. Board member Keller stood abruptly. "This is character assassination. My son. Your son harassed a fellow student and faced no consequences because you write checks. That's not merit. That's purchase." Victoria didn't flinch. "This institution can choose what it values, but it can no longer pretend both are the same." She sat down. Marcus, seated in the gallery, met her eyes. He nodded once. Whatever happened next, she had finally told the truth. That alone felt like victory. The committee ruled in Marcus's favor. Probation lifted. Brandon Keller quietly withdrew from Georgetown 2 weeks later, his family's donations suddenly insufficient to erase the public record Victoria had created. Dean Holloway offered her a tight smile at the next faculty meeting and said nothing about what had transpired. Victoria resigned anyway, not from shame, from clarity. She had spent her career building something that no longer fit. Dr. Samuel Preston, her old mentor, offered her a position at his legal aid clinic in Southeast D.C. The salary was a fraction of her professorship. The work felt like breathing for the first time. On her last day at Georgetown, Marcus found her packing boxes in her office. "You didn't have to leave," he said from the doorway. Lily peeked around his leg, clutching a handmade card. "I did, actually." Victoria smiled, and the expression felt foreign and wonderful. "I spent years teaching law as a weapon. I'd like to try teaching it as protection." Lily approached shyly, extending the card. Construction paper hearts surrounded wobbly letters. "Thank you for being nice to my daddy." Victoria knelt to accept it, her eyes stinging. "You're welcome, sweetheart. Your daddy taught me something important." "What?" Victoria looked up at Marcus. "That being strong isn't the same as being hard, and that the people who deserve the most are often the ones who ask for the least." Marcus helped her carry boxes to her car. In the parking lot, spring sunlight warming the afternoon, he paused. "For what it's worth, you were a great professor. Terrifying, but great." Victoria laughed, a sound she barely recognized from herself. "I was effective. I'd like to try being great now." "You will be." He extended his hand, and when she took it, he pulled her into a brief, warm embrace. "Thank you, Victoria, for seeing me when you didn't have to. Thank you for being worth seeing." She drove away from Georgetown, with her rearview mirror full of a life she no longer wanted. Ahead, the clinic waited, messy, underfunded, full of people who needed someone to fight for them. Victoria thought of her father's portrait, his legacy of cold excellence. Then she thought of Lily's card on her passenger seat. For the first time in 28 years, she knew exactly who she wanted to become, and she couldn't wait to begin.